Well, I always thought that the biggest myth about programming is that it's hard, that it's only for geeks, that only mathematicians or people, with a degree, only those people can do it. But it couldn't be further from truth. I always talk about Peter Levels, who is a guy from Netherlands and who built Nomad List and Remote OK websites. And he barely knew any programming, So he was kind of learning on the way. And now he is generating a revenue of $1 million per year. And he barely has any team, He's just a guy who learned to code on the way. So for those of you who don't know, Nomad List is a website where if you are a digital nomad, and you just go to this website and you see all of those destinations ranked by different factors. And that's how you choose, where to go next. So that is an extremely valuable resource for digital nomads. And Remote OK, it is a website for remote jobs. So those developers, who want to find a remote job, that's where they go. And, employers pay, to post the job advertisements. So these two websites, they were built by this guy from Netherlands who barely knew any coding, and he learned it along the way. And for all of those years, as this website was growing, he wasn't using any fancy technologies. Remote OK is a single PHP file, index.php. He doesn't use any frameworks except for jQuery, but no fancy things, and no Git, no code versioning. He was simply using FTP to upload his files, And for many of experienced guys like me, it sounds like a horror, Like, how can you do it? How can you code like this? And especially, how can you grow a project, like two projects combined, to $1 million per year in revenues? How can you do it, Well, there are those startups, which get 10 billions in funding. And they hire the best talents, those people, they have a lot of experience, and they use all the fancy technologies and fancy tools, fancy architectures. But those startups, they fail, they fail and they lose money. So why Peter Levels is such an inspirational guy? Because he proved that with minimal knowledge, with minimal skills, you can build something amazing that people use and that people pay money for. And another example, when I was a digital nomad myself, I was living in Chiang Mai at the time, and I was going to Space, one of the major co-working spaces in the town. And I remember meeting this German guy who was a coder. And I asked him, so what are you working on? And he said, well, I just built this app, which is kind of a to-do list for travelers, like what to pack, what kind of stuff to pack in your luggage, so a to-do list. And this was an app for Android. And his app was like a prototype, it wasn't fully completed, but it was working. I tested it, and it was nice. And so this question, which I asked him afterwards, it changed my perspective. I asked him, so how did you learn to code, and when did you start to learn, coding for Android? And he said it was 6 weeks ago. So in 6 weeks, he went from zero to somebody who can create apps for Android. And that is amazing, That is inspiring for me. And that's why I always say that you don't need to be a geek, and you don't need a degree, You don't need to spend 4 years in a university, trying to learn something that you barely need. What you need is inspiration, is a plan, what do you want to achieve? And then you go out there and you get those skills. You can learn by yourself, of course, with all of the free resources available, but then you have to filter, you have to filter the good weeds from the bad weeds. Or you can go to the masters, you can go to the experts who will teach you step by step, but you have to be careful. You need to choose the masters who will teach you only the essential stuff, You don't need, if you're learning PHP, you don't need to learn all of the documentation, in PHP. That's bullshit, Why do you want to know, so much stuff, if you're going to use only 1% of that? So you just go to those masters who will teach you exactly what you want, what you need to get going, and then you improve along the way. Because the most important thing is to get into doing, get into shipping your products, websites, services, The most important thing is to ship, build your MVPs. For building MVPs, you don't need to be an expert, in programming. You can be a beginner, but then you improve along the way. And you don't need to be a geek, Personally, I was always into arts, and 15 years ago I started programming, but also at the same time I was into photography, I was into movie making, and recently I started painting, as you see those paintings there on the wall, they are painted by me. And I never lost this artistic side of me, and I never considered myself as a geek, because, in programming, not everyone is writing algorithms. In programming, we have those scales which are called high-level programming and low-level programming. And by high and low, I don't mean that higher level is better than lower level. It's a different meaning. The meaning is that people who write low-level code, they are the ones who are writing those algorithms, those formulas, those mathematical functions. Because people who are writing higher level code, they are using the work of those geeks and scientists. And I will admit, of course, most of the coders, most of the PHP coders, most of the web developers, we are building on top of the shoulders of giants. We are using various libraries, we are using frameworks. And those frameworks and libraries, they bring the best code practices, into us. And for example, when I want to do something really geeky, I don't need to reinvent the wheel, because it's already done. So I just go out there, I take that function, I take that algorithm, and I use it. In fact, when a web developer is developing a website, he writes 98%, sorry, not, I have to say it in the other way. He writes only like 2 or 1% of the code by himself, and all of the other code, this is just libraries, frameworks, that are taken from somewhere else. So, you don't need to be a geek, Me, myself, I was always at the higher level coding. I was a full stack developer, and, I would code backend, I would code frontend, I would use PHP, MySQL, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. But, I would never go into the internals, of how JavaScript works, of how PHP works. Because why? Why do I need that? My purpose is, the purpose of high-level developers are to serve business functions. We get a business task, business objective, like if you're working in e-commerce, the objective might be to increase conversion rate, on this shop, by 10%, for example, or to retain more visitors, on the website. And if you want to do that, perhaps we want to do this exit pop-up, where somebody, when they scroll the mouse over the window, this pop-up appears that, hey, please subscribe to our newsletter and you will get 10% discount. So, our job is to implement those business tasks, is to turn business tasks into technical tasks and execute it. And then after you do it, then you can test, you can do A/B testing to see, if this worked and what progress it gave, to this overall shop, and that's how we get paid. But in all of this process, I don't need to build a programming language. I don't need to build an algorithm. I don't need to know how PHP or JavaScript internals work, because why? Why on earth I would need to know that? That was already done, We don't need to reinvent the wheel. I sometimes, of course, I am curious, about how those internal works, and for my own curiosity, I go into more geeky stuff. But my point is that it's totally not needed. So you don't need to be a geek, That's the biggest myth, And there are so many developers who are artistic like me, or who are perhaps more into sports, and they are not really into sitting at the computer all day. So that's just a myth, We as developers, we are pretty flexible, We are, usually, we can choose, the amount of hours, we want to work, and we can choose, which tools we want to use, to improve our efficiency. So we are pretty independent and sovereign people, and, we have this freedom, to design our lifestyles, in the way we want. And, you don't need to be that geek, with a big beard, bigger than mine, and, this guy, who doesn't see sun and who spends all day sitting at the computer. So that is just not true. Well, the best way to answer this question is to look at this from a values standpoint. For me, one of the most important things is freedom. And career in web development, it allowed me to have a lot of freedom. And I think the more you progress, the more freedoms you can gain. So for example, when you are starting out, most likely you will go into a job, as a developer. I think most of you will go into a regular job after you had some training, and some of you perhaps will start with a freelancing career. But both of those careers, they are usually dependent on space and time. What I mean by that you have to go into the office as an employee, or as a freelancer, you have to go and meet your clients, to discuss. Nowadays, maybe that's moving more into online space, but at the time when I started, that was the norm, to go and meet all of my clients in person and have multiple meetings in person. But if you're going to start as an employee, most likely you will start as an office employee, where you will be dependent on space and time, meaning that you will need to go into a certain space and work a certain amount of hours. But then as you gain more experience and as you gain more trust, what will happen, that it will be easier and easier for you to move into remote positions, where you will become independent of space. You will not need to go into certain places, on Earth. You will also be able to start using the geographical arbitrage, by becoming a digital nomad. For example, if you are in a high-cost, high-wages country, you might move, like I did, to Thailand, and simply, you continue earning your Western salary, and you are living on Asian costs. So that's one of the ways, that you can approach it. But at the other hand, You don't really need to leave your country, but this freedom of mobility, this, not needing to go into office, and to spend time in traffic jams, this will already bring you further towards liberation, because you will save time, and you will have more time, for other activities, like perhaps spending time with your family, or just reading, or working out, or just walking, in the nature. So that is already a liberating feeling, and you can achieve this pretty quickly. And also, as you gain even more experience, you will start to notice that you're getting more efficient, at doing things. And you will start to see that, oh, this thing, which took like 8 hours, for me to do in the past, now it's taking me only 6 hours. And later you will see that, oh, now it's taking only 4 hours. And you will learn, all of the best practices, how to work efficiently, and you will not need to work 8 hours anymore, You will be fine with 6 hours, then with 5, and then even with 4 hours, because you will see that you are doing the same work in 4 hours as you did in 8 hours. When you are a remote developer, nobody is watching, you, and remote contracts, they are based on value, If people are getting value, from your work, then that's great, you are getting paid. So, and nobody cares, when are you working exactly, is it evening, morning, night, who cares, When you are not in the office, you don't have this feeling that, oh, all of these co-workers, they are working from 8 to 5, so I have to be in there, or, oh, my boss is working until 8 p.m. I have to stay, because that's all of this bullshit, You won't need this. So this is the second step. When you start to get liberated from time constraints, you need to spend less and less time, on the work that you're doing. And since web development is usually a well-paid activity, you will see that it's easy for you to earn more money than you need. And then you will start to save and compound your money. And that's how you will be approaching your way into financial freedom, Because by compounding money and investing your money into profit-bringing investments, into cash flow investments, you will see that after some time, you will not need to work anymore. Or, on the other hand, to even speed up this process, towards financial freedom, you might see that, oh, I have all of those skills, I have all of this experience, and I see that, these people, they have a problem, like Peter Levels did. He saw, okay, these digital nomads, they have a problem. They don't know where to go. They don't know how to, is this destination good? Does it have good internet? Is it safe for women? Or is it like, am I going to like this place? So Peter Levels capitalized on this lack, in the market, and he built his own muse. He built his own project that is now bringing 1 million revenue per year. So you will see that you might even become an entrepreneur, a person who is using his technical skills, to build projects that are bringing money. And these have unlimited potential, because all jobs have a cap, on how much you can earn. But when you build your own muse, then there is no limit. And perhaps you will end up in this situation where, you're earning like 10 times more, from your muse than your job, and you will simply quit your job, and that's how you will gain like a fast track, towards financial freedom, because you will be earning even more money and saving even more, investing even more. So that's why I really think that programming is really one of the most empowering careers, and it can give you so many freedoms in such a short amount of time. And for example, freedom of mobility, it's so easy, to be a remote worker, when you're a web developer. Well, if you are a doctor, for example, and you are doing, surgical things, for people, then you cannot do it remotely. If you are a janitor, you cannot do it remotely. You are constrained by space and time. But web development it's kind of by default, you are remote, so because even if you're in the office, you are still kind of remote, from other coworkers, because you don't want to talk, you are so focused, and you don't want any distraction. So when I was an office employee, I was still kind of remote, I was remote from all of the coworkers, and I would set up rules, that okay, because I was a CTO at some point, in my career, so I was kind of the manager, of IT team, and I set this rule, that this is our room, of web developers, and all other coworkers, they can enter only after 4 p.m. They can only intrude, our room only after 4 p.m. Because we don't want your distractions, we don't want your, oh my gosh, how to do that, oh this doesn't work, and most of their craziness, in their head is just simply because they don't know how to use a computer, but we as developers, we are doing a valuable work, we cannot get distracted, by explaining, some simple stuff, to somebody who can simply Google, or watch YouTube, how to do it. My personal story. Okay, so it started in 2005, and I was still in school, I was 13 years of age, I'm now 28. And I remember, this kind of web development was getting, popular. And me and one of my classmates, we were just curious, about it. And so what we were doing, we were kind of competing, like who can build a better website. So I was just Googling, about HTML. I was having my notes, I was taking notes and I was learning. And what I was doing, I was looking for some templates, already made templates, and I was just tweaking them, modifying them. And in that way, I built my personal website, where I was posting some music, some basic stuff. And it was just for fun, and I was competing, with my classmate who was also doing the same thing, and it was just interesting. So from 2005 to 2007, for those 2 years, it was a learning period for me. I was just doing something, like as a hobby, some projects. I was learning CSS, I was learning some PHP, some database stuff, and those projects were getting more and more complicated. But of course, it was at a very, very beginner level, I wasn't an expert at that time. And I remember in 2007, I received a call from one guy whom I didn't know, and on this call, he said, look, I have this real estate agency, and I need a website for my agency. And I said, no, and he said, like, I need this website to be done on WordPress. And at that time, I didn't know any WordPress, I wasn't working with WordPress, so I just told him, no, I cannot do it, I do not work on WordPress. And then he said one of the most empowering things that he could ever say to me, that anybody could ever say to me at that time. He said, look, but I really need this website, and I need it on WordPress. So perhaps you can try at least. And I thought for a second, and I said, okay, let me try. So that was how I learned WordPress, and I learned along the way, of course, because, Google is your friend. So I built him this website and he was happy, and of course I earned money for this. And that was the start of my freelancing career. And after your first clients, then your second client comes, the third client, and because it's all a word of mouth, when you are doing something in a good way, when people like your service, then they recommend you to somebody else. So basically, I never promoted myself, and this, freelancing career, it lasted for 7 years, and when I was in school, I went into university and I was learning about international business, because I didn't really want to get a degree in IT or in computer science, because I thought, why? I'm already earning money, by doing freelance work as a web developer. What I'm going to learn in there, I already know this skill, so why do I need to study this? So, I already had this specialized knowledge, and I didn't need the specialized knowledge in any other field. So I just thought, okay, perhaps I want to study something broader, so that's why I chose international business. And I will say that, of course, this degree was like bullshit, I didn't really need it. And, I think that it was a waste of time. But anyways, I did it, and I was still freelancing, while I was in university until the last year. And in the last year, I was approached by one of my former, freelance clients, and she had launched a company like 3 years ago, back then, and it was doing well, and they needed an additional developer, in their team. And at the time, the team was only like 2 people, not including me. So, and it was like a very well experienced guy who was a CTO, and then another guy, and then me. So I joined this company, and I'm really grateful. It was like my first experience as an office employee, in a company, which is growing and expanding. It like later on, it became like one of the most successful e-commerce stores, in the whole Baltic states. So it was really a fascinating time. But the most important thing is that I learned a lot, because this guy who was the CTO, he had so much experience, and he was reviewing my code, and he was pointing out exactly those areas where I needed to improve. And working independently is different from working in a team, because when you work in a team, you have to write clean, well-organized code. You need to think about architecture, because people will be building on top of your code afterwards, or perhaps they will be editing your code or debugging your code in the future when you are not working here anymore. So that's when you really start to go towards perfection. When you are alone, you don't care. But when you are working in a team, that's when you start, going into perfection. So in about 3 months, I learned so much, It was a very intensive time, but I loved it. And I think that is an essential thing for anyone, who is going into web development, is to find a good mentor, for you, who is reviewing your code and who can give you advice. So in this company, I worked for 2.5 years, and then I quit, and I just, I went into building my own projects. So I was building my own e-commerce projects and some other kind of like online learning projects. All of them failed, but I learned a lot. It lasted like for about 3 years, because I wanted to transition into entrepreneur, and I think that was the hardest point in my career. But at some point, you just realize that, okay, I already know so much. I have so much experience, and I want to serve people, because in a job you have this intermediary. You are not really serving customers directly. You are serving your boss. You are serving your company, which then serves the customers. So you have this intermediary, and this intermediary is a bottleneck. So after some time, you just think that, okay, why do I need this intermediary? Like Peter Levels, he's doing like almost 100 grand per year, with his own project with no intermediaries. So why do I need this? So that's when those questions arise. And of course, so I went into those projects and I went like all in. I was living from my savings and I was bootstrapping. And those projects, well, like it was like, when this project fails, I have run out of money. Then I go into some, like, again, some freelance working agreement where I earn big amount of cash, in a short time. And then I go again, with another project, for another 6 months, and then it was like a repeating pattern. And I realized at some point that, okay, I'm too volatile, and it's very hard to do it when you see that you're running out of cash, and when you cannot really invest in your business as much as you want, because you need to basically sustain yourself. So then what happened that I went into a remote developer contract for 2 years. So I'm in the middle of this contract at the moment, and this gave me stability. This reduced this emotional volatilities, and it is the most efficient way of working, because it is freedom of mobility. You are not wasting time of going into the office, and I am working whenever I want, and I am, nobody is watching, on my back, what I'm doing. I'm simply serving them, and that's great. So there is no kind of a boss, who is just pinpointing, now you do that, now you do that. So I have this freedom, and I also have enough time, to work on my muses. So that is my story, where I am now. I think that, the first thing that comes into my mind is that you should never ever call yourself as a junior developer, because that makes you smaller, that makes you feel like inferior, to some other people. And I think, well, it's so funny, I was Googling around this topic, so much, I was talking to people, I was reading, those discussions, in the internet. And in reality, there is no clear definitions, on what is a junior, what is a mid, and what is a senior developer. So nobody knows for sure. So that is that's your boss is telling you, the boss is labeling you if you are a junior or mid or senior. And so that is hilarious, I think that's the corporations, who invented those labels, when they are, posting those job ads. Like they say, okay, we're looking for a junior developer. But I think that's what makes you feel inferior, and what makes you earn less, because juniors, of course, they are paid less. But in reality, a junior can work better than a senior, developer. if we use those labels. But like what I mean by that is that somebody with 1 year experience, they can work in the same way as somebody with 10 years experience, because maybe this guy with 10 years experience, maybe he's thinking too much, maybe he has too much crap, in his head. And then what happens that they are just so slow, they're so slow into shipping, features, because they just simply overthink. And those people, with passion, with determination, and with less experience, they can do magnificent things. I will always repeat, about Peter Levels, like this guy, with minimum experience, how much value he gave, to the world. His projects are now making $1 million per year in revenue. So that's amazing, what you can achieve. So never call yourself junior. If you want to put a label yourself, then call yourself expert, and that's it. That's my best recommendation. Also, I want to illustrate my other advice with a story, So one time, there was this guy who was going through the city, and he saw some builders working, and so there were 3 builders, and he asked each of them this question: what are you working on? What are you doing? And the first guy, he said, I am laying a brick. And then the second guy said, I am building a wall. And the third guy, he said, I am building a cathedral. So what I want to say that it's about your mindset, You should never ever be this guy who was laying bricks. In terms of web development, laying bricks is like, moving buttons, moving call to action buttons, changing the colors of the buttons, expanding the width of columns or contracting the, all of this stuff, this is like laying bricks. So, of course, you will be doing this, and everyone is doing this, even me, is doing that. But I'm not looking at myself as this guy who is laying bricks. I'm always having this big vision in my mind of what are we trying to achieve, So for example, if this is a CRM system, for example, that we are building, like customer relationship management. So I have this picture in my mind, and then when I am building some crude actions, like let's say this add new customer page, with all of those form fields and buttons, I'm not looking at this like, I'm only building this form, I'm laying those input fields and submit buttons. No, what I'm doing is I'm building a cathedral. I'm building this wonderful CRM system, and that's what I care about. That's my end goal. That's my big vision, which I have in my mind. And like the best part about it is that when you have this big vision in your mind, you get inspired by that. You have the biggest chance of waking up in the morning and being spontaneously inspired about this work that you are going to do. And then what happens in your mind is that it starts to work better. It starts to give you more and more ideas. It starts to give you shortcuts because your subconscious gets into the work, and it starts to spit out, ideas, on how I can get to this outcome even quicker and in a better way. So that's when amazing things happen, and that's when you become the best builder in town. Simply because you imagined yourself as a cathedral builder. And it's not really about the work that you're doing, because all of the builders, they were doing the same work, and all of the developers are doing the same work, there's just no way around it. That's your tools and you use it, but it's about mindset. So if you want to work more effectively and more to do things quicker, do things better, and in that way, to earn more money. So See yourself as a cathedral builder. Value your time. Well, if you have this boss, which says like, can you work like these additional hours, to finish this quicker? No, never do it. Why would you ever do it? Unless you ask to pay it like at least twice, your hourly wage, then do not do it, because you are exhausting yourself. Programming is a mentally exhaustive activity, and if you were already working like for 8 hours, and if you continue, working more, then you will pay a toll, with your health, with your mental health, and perhaps the next day you will be more exhausted, and maybe you will drink coffee, to give a boost to yourself. And as we all know, if you drink too much coffee, then you will be even more exhausted, and that's like a vicious circle. But my point is that who paid for this? Are you getting paid for this? So you have to be the one who is setting price, for your time. And I see so many developers who are not paying attention to this, if there's something important, they will wake up earlier, they will start work earlier, and they will work into late hours. Then they are not even asking to be paid for this. And to me, that's just stupid, So who are you? Are you valuing your time? You should get proper rest, because otherwise you will have problems with your health. So are you working as a slave? Are you working for the sake of work, or are you working so that you want to liberate yourself and to eventually gain financial independence? So that's what you have to answer. But to me, I would always set this specific hour when I finish the work, and it doesn't matter, have I finished this feature or not. I don't care, I'm just giving this exact amount of input every day, and that's it. You are not paid, for anything else. My other advice is to meditate. You have to clean your mind. You have to clear your thoughts, because when you're a web developer, you're spending so much time in your mind. It's such a mentally exhaustive activity. And usually, when you finish your work, in those hours after work, it seems that you are still thinking, about this work. Those thinking patterns, seems to be like they are continuing. And to me, during my darkest periods, I was like, I would go into bed, and I would wake up in the morning with a solution, for my problem, which I was facing, the day before. And then I would think, oh, so did I sleep or not? It seems that I was programming during the night, while I was in my bed. But, this shouldn't happen, So, because then you are a slave, you are a slave to your thoughts. But you have, so if you want to be a successful web developer, you have to become a master of your mind. There's just no other way around it. Otherwise, you will pay in your health. You will lose your health. So meditation is a good way, to clean up your mind. And if you are into other spiritual practices like yoga, for example, or sometimes even singing, or sports, it can help as well, to clean your mind. But that's a necessity. You have to do it if you want to be successful. I don't believe in conventional dogmas, that you have to go to a university, to get a degree in computer science, and then what, I was a CTO at one of the most successful e-commerce companies in the Baltic states. And I remember for one position, web developer position, I was interviewing around 30 people, and many of them had computer science degrees, but they were like straight out of the university, and they didn't know shit about programming. They didn't have any real world experience, and the stuff that they learned is just not relevant. They cannot use it in this kind of job. So I thought, like, what the hell, why did they do that? So the first thing is that you don't need to go to university. I have prepared a course for you where I teach you all of the essential skills that you need to become a successful web developer. So in my course, we talk about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, and MySQL. This is the technical part. And then we have a non-technical part where I teach you about how to get a job as a web developer. And in that module, I'm teaching about 3 different ways on how you can do it. And I have tried those ways personally myself, and I had success with those methods. So, this is not just some bullshit, that I read online. This is based from my own personal experience. And also, if you are a freelancer, I will share, if you want to go into freelancing, then I will share my own freelancing experience, because that's what I was doing for 7 years, in the past, out of my entire 15 years career. And I have one more module about the secrets of effective work of web developers. And also the last module is about setting your goals and designing your lifestyle. Because what I really want you to achieve is to not only become a web developer, I'm not, this school, this online school is not like a university, where you go and you get a degree and then you don't know what to do with this degree. I am teaching you the essential stuff. You learn this stuff and you go and build things. You practice, because you have the tools and you have the skills. You don't need to know how PHP internals work. You don't need to know, how this language appeared, in this world, and you don't need to know any algorithms. You just simply need to know how to code and how to build stuff. And then, for gaining experience, you have 2 ways. You can go into an office job, where you will be an employee, but choose this job carefully, ensure that there is a CTO, and that your code will be reviewed and you will be getting comments, on your code. In that way, you will be learning extremely fast. That's what I was doing myself. And in 3 months, I was like, before that, my 7 years of experience was like this, and in those 3 months I got like this, of experience. That is very, very important. But on the other hand, you can go into freelancing world, and that's how you can learn as well. And in both ways, you will be earning money, you will be already a profitable web developer, and you will be getting this experience, that you really, really need. Because, you cannot learn everything in the classroom, and there is no need, to learn in the classroom. That's a practical activity. Web development is practical, so we need to learn on the job. Then, when you have this experience, the further step that you can make is to gain freedom of mobility. If you are an employee, you can negotiate a remote working position. If that doesn't work, you just quit that job and you go to websites like remoteok.io, and you get a remote position. Because for remote positions, usually nobody wants people who have like totally no experience, because you are on your own, so there is no manager watching you, so in remote agreements, you are exchanging value. You are not exchanging your time, but you are exchanging value. What you do and what people pay for you. But what will happen? That you will have stability of income, and also you will have freedom of mobility and freedom, to choose, when you work, and also since you will not be moving to a certain place on earth, to go to work, you will save much time, for your other activities. And then it will be a time for you to think about building your muses, your own projects. In other words, by going directly into the market and serving people directly. People have problems. So, as with the example of Peter Levels, he noted this lack of website, where you can go and evaluate destinations for digital nomads. So he built this nomad list, and he's making a lot of money, much more than any job can ever pay you. So when you do that, you will see that, okay, I don't need this job anymore. So you will be able to quit the job market forever. And that's when you when you will be earning more money, than you actually need, much more money than you actually need. And you will start to save and compound and invest. And that's when you will be going towards financial independence. So that is the way, that I am proposing. On my course, it covers all of those steps, to finally, to liberate yourself, to gain freedom, and to live an extraordinary lifestyle. So this career in web development, that is one of the ways that you can achieve it. So I want you to look into this proposal, as to not so that I'm not only going to teach you technical skills, but I'm going to teach you, how to go much, much, much further. And that is the unique feature, of my course, because I think differently. I'm not really into being a slave, for my entire life. And even though I like coding, and perhaps I will continue, doing this as a hobby, as a way to help people for the rest of my life, maybe. But the but what I really value is freedom, So, and when you are free, when you are financially free, when you can choose, if you want to work or not, that's when the world changes, That's when you can really start to serve out of your soul, when you don't need to think about your financial situation. So that is my proposal, So you can become an empowered individual who is financially free and who has one of the most valuable skills on this planet at the moment, and who can really build stuff and who can serve vast amounts of people. Because when you build a website or system, it's so powerful, You can reach an entire world with this. Like when I'm working with e-commerce project, and we have like 1,000 visitors per day, So, well, it's just hard to realize how many people you are actually serving with your own work. Like 30,000 people per month are using something that you build. That's amazing, It's it's leverage. It's a great tool of leverage. You cannot do this well, as a janitor, for example, or as a driver. It's you can only serve one people at a time. But with this career, with this activity, you can, with the help of internet, you can reach vast amounts of people and you can serve so much. So this is what I propose. Hi, my name is Tomas Cherry and welcome to Web Developer Accelerator. So you've been dreaming about this lifestyle where you can earn serious cash while not being forced to go to a certain place on Earth and not needing to work a predefined amount of hours. That's exactly what a career in web development allowed me to do. I created this school to help you master your professional life in this exciting career. I've been in web development for 15 years and I went through a full career path, starting from a freelancer, then to office employee, then to CTO, then to remote developer, and finally a technical entrepreneur. In my comprehensive master classes, you will learn all of the skills that you need in order to become a successful and sovereign web developer. I will teach you about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP and MySQL, how to make money like a master, the secrets of top performers, and finally how to set your goals and design your new lifestyle. Stop compromising your life for that job you already hate. Your new life of peace, inspiration and freedom is closer than you think. My strategies worked for me and they will work for you if you do the work. So congratulations on embarking on this journey with us, and I can't wait to see how you grow and evolve over the next year. Are you ready to begin?